Some of these promises kind of overlap each other because one sentence will be a promise, the next sentence will be some parts of it, and then the next sentence will be another promise. And so in the Bible, you have to study that and see that, anytime it opens up, be watching for that. And this is what we're having in this particular promise 7, is I have a promise 7a and a promise 7b. And the reason because of that is the first part of that verse, if you look at Genesis 22:17, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gates of his enemies. So the promise is first talking about God's going to make these people a multitudinous amount of people in the earth. There's going to be so many of them. There's going to be so many of them. You can't even number them as the grain of the sand on the seashore. The stars in heaven, we know that there's billions of galaxies and billions of stars. And this seed is going to be overwhelmingly obvious that they're going to have certain markings in their lives, and certain things are going to come to pass that identifies these people over time. But that was promise 7, being that many. The promise 7a is that last sentence there. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Okay, so what would that be? Well, that would be Japan. They were our enemies at one time, and now we have military officers stationed in Japan. We have military installations all through Europe, through the NATO nations. We had a conflict with Germany. We have men stationed there now. We possess the gate of his enemies. Some people say, well, you're stretching the truth. That was back when they were marching into the promised land and had been given the land by God to them. And they had to go in there and possess the cities like Jericho. They marched around the walls fell down, they took over the city. Well, that's what God is saying. From the day that he made this promise, those people would have that ability with God's help. Right there, promise number 7a. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. I want to put a little video. It's going to be separate from this broadcast. It's going to be a video that's going to be separate. And it's this Jewish guy. It's kind of hard to understand him. And it's this other guy. And they explain the gates of his enemies. Where those gates are. Where those places are that we occupy. Because we live in a very unstable world. In a very unsafe world. We need military out there in those areas to keep intelligence going and to keep track of what our enemy's doing in the gate. So that's promise number 7a. It's attached to 7 there in that same verse, 17. But then you got to go to 7b. 7b okay, now gets controversial too. This is promise 7b. It's found in 2 Samuel, and I believe it's chapter 7. All these promises are in Genesis 22 and 2 Samuel 7. Now, during this time, King David is ruling, and they've been given their land up to Lebanon, and you've seen the maps of the land that was given to them. But this is a little add-on that Nathan gave of some questions that David was having in his lifetime, wondering what was going to become of everything. It says, "Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them that they may dwell in a place of their own and move no more. Nor shall the wicked sons of wickedness oppress them any more, as previously, since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused you to rest from all your enemies. Also the Lord tells you that he will make you a house." Okay, well, there's a lot of promises in here where all the enemies have been overcome. God appoints these judges, which is the tribe of Dan. They become judges. These judges later on get in a lot of trouble with God. They're not included in the 144,000 that are sealed at the end of Revelations during the tribulation period. The 144,000 preachers that are going to be preaching. Dan is removed from the tribe. There's 12,000 from every tribe but Dan. And Dan judges his people. He's the judge of the people. And their corruption is so bad over the years that God doesn't use them at that particular time. That's what my opinion is. Now, here comes the opinions. A lot of people don't believe 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 10. But God is going to move his people one more time. He's going to route them a place, a safer place, a place where they can rest, a place where they can raise families, a place where their enemies aren't always constantly threatening them. "Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them that they may dwell in the place of their own, and move no more, nor shall the sons of wickedness oppress them any more." You look at Israel today, the country Israel. They have rockets firing in there, trying to destroy the whole nation. They have enemies on every side of the nation. The sons of wickedness oppress them daily over there right now. So that couldn't be the land that the Lord is talking about. He's not going to put them in the Middle East, or what they call the Levant, and then move them out to a safer place, and then a few years later, or 1,000 years later, or 2,000 years later, move them back in the same place where they don't have the defense, where it's unsafe, where the sons of wickedness are constantly bombarding them with rockets, and the terrible thing that happened October the 7th. So that's promise number 7A and 7B. 2 Samuel 7:10 is 7B. In the second half of verse 17 in Genesis chapter 22, I believe, the second half of that was promise 7B. I'm going to keep on with these promises. That just gives you an idea in how people interpret things. And shows us the stark reality of God's prophecies coming to pass. I'm going to go with Promise 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So I'll keep you posted.